$80 billion. That's what the man behind this door was worth. In 1908, a broke young journalist knocked on the door of the richest man alive. Andrew Carnegie had built an empire in steel, and in today's money, his fortune would sit somewhere around $80 billion. The journalist had been sent to write a simple magazine profile. A few questions, an hour of the great man's time. That was the assignment. Carnegie kept him for 3 days and 3 nights. Because somewhere in that conversation, Carnegie decided this young man was the one, and he made him an offer that would sound insane to anyone else. He said, "I will introduce you to the 500 wealthiest people in America, the Fords, the Edisons, the Rockefellers. You will study them for the next 20 years, and you will extract from their lives a single formula for success, a formula the ordinary person can follow." Then Carnegie added a twist. He would not pay him a cent. If the young man wanted it, he'd have to want it badly enough to sacrifice 20 years on faith alone. Carnegie held a stopwatch under the desk. He later admitted he gave the man exactly 60 seconds to decide. If he'd taken longer than a minute, Carnegie would have withdrawn the offer, because a man who can't make a decision that big, that fast, will never finish a 20-year task. The journalist said yes in 29 seconds. His name was Napoleon Hill. The book that came out of those 20 years is called Think and Grow Rich. It has sold over 100 million copies, and inside it are 13 principles that require no luck, no inheritance, and no genius. But before the principles, you need the one idea that ties them all together. Because without it, the 13 are just a checklist. Here it is. Thoughts are things. Hill's entire philosophy rests on a single claim. That the thoughts you hold in your mind, repeated, intensified by emotion and backed by a burning desire, have a way of translating themselves into their physical equivalent. Now, when Hill wrote that in 1937, it sounded almost supernatural. But strip away the language of his era and look at what he's actually describing. He's describing the mechanism by which a clear, obsessive goal reshapes your attention, your decisions, and your behavior, until the outside world starts to rearrange around it. The book is not called Wish and Grow Rich. It is not called Work Hard and Grow Rich. It is called Think and Grow Rich, because Hill discovered that every fortune he studied began not in a bank, not in a factory, but in a specific thought held by a specific person who refused to let it go. That brings us to Principle 1, the starting point. Desire. Every fortune begins with desire. But Hill draws a razor-sharp line between a wish and a desire, and almost everyone lives on the wrong side of it. A wish is passive. It would be nice to be wealthy. A desire is a white-hot obsession that organizes your entire life around a single outcome. And to show the difference, Hill tells the story of Edwin Barnes. Barnes wanted to go into business with Thomas Edison, not work for him, but partner with him. The problem? He didn't know Edison. He had no money. He had no way to even reach the man. He was so broke he had to ride to Edison's laboratory in a freight train, literally arriving as a hobo. He walked into the most famous inventor in the world and announced he was there to become his business partner. Edison's staff laughed. But Edison later said he saw something in the man's face, a look of absolute determination. So he gave him a floor-sweeping job. Months passed, years passed. Barnes swept floors and waited. Then one day, Edison invented a dictating machine his own salesman thought was worthless and refused to sell. Barnes stepped forward and said, "I'll sell it." He sold it so well that Edison gave him a contract to distribute it across the entire nation. Edwin Barnes became rich, the literal partner of Thomas Edison, because he held one definite desire and refused every exit for years. Here is Hill's formula, distilled, the 6 steps to turn desire into money. Step 1. Fix the exact amount you want, not a lot. A number. Precision matters because the mind cannot organize around a fog. Step 2. Decide exactly what you'll give in return. Money is not found, it's exchanged for value. Step 3. Set a definite datum. Step 4. Build a plan and start now. Not when you feel ready. You will never feel ready. Step 5. Write all of it down in one clear statement. The sum, the deadline, the plan. Step 6. Read that statement aloud twice a day, morning and night, and as you read it, see and feel yourself already in possession of it. Most people scoff at step 6, affirmations. But watch closely because the next 2 principles reveal exactly why it works, and it has nothing to do with magic. Principles 2 and 3, faith and autosuggestion, are the machinery that makes step 6 work, and they run as a single engine. Faith in Hill's framework is not religious, it's certainty, an unshakable expectation of success. And Hill makes a claim that was radical for his time and is now backed by modern science. Faith can be manufactured. Here's the mechanism. Your subconscious mind cannot tell the difference between a real experience and one you vividly imagine with intense emotion. Repeat a thought often enough with enough feeling, and the subconscious accepts it as a fact, and then goes to work making your behavior match. That deliberate repetition is autosuggestion. Principle 3. Picture your mind as a ship. Your conscious mind is the captain on the bridge, setting the course. Your subconscious is the vast engine room below, powering the vessel according to whatever orders it receives. And autosuggestion is the telegraph line connecting them. Most people never touch that telegraph line. So random thoughts, other people's doubts, the news, old fears, all of it travels down to the engine room, and the subconscious dutifully builds a life around that chaos. Hill's method seizes the line. You choose the message, the 6 steps, twice a day with emotion. And slowly, the engine room recalibrates. There's a bundle of neurons at the base of your brain called the reticular activating system. Its job is to filter the flood of information hitting your senses and show your conscious mind only what it deems relevant. Tell it relentlessly, I am building wealth. And it begins flagging opportunities, connections and ideas you'd have walked straight past for years. Hill didn't have the neuroscience, but he saw the result in 500 wealthy men and he named it correctly. You're not summoning money from the universe. You're reprogramming the filter through which you see the world. The subconscious is a garden. Whatever seeds you plant through repetition and emotion will grow. It cannot tell a weed from a crop. It just grows whatever you feed it. And to prove this under the hardest possible circumstances, Hill tells the most personal story in the entire book. The story of his own son. Hill's son Blair was born without ears, no physical apparatus for hearing at all. Doctors said he would be deaf and mute for life, but Hill refused to plant that belief in the boy. Every single night, he poured one idea into his son's mind. You are not handicapped. Your supposed disadvantage is a great asset. You will find a way to hear. He said it so consistently with such conviction that the boy came to believe it as fact. And through a series of events, Hill attributes directly to that unshakable belief Blair eventually gained roughly 65% of his hearing, a case that stunned his doctors. Hill's point: if faith can do that against a physical impossibility, what could it do against your mere financial circumstances? The question is, what are you planting? The inner work sets the course, but principles 4 through 8 are where you actually build the ship, and it's where most readers of this book quietly give up. They do the affirmations. They skip the labor. Principle 4 is specialized knowledge. Hill draws a hard line. General knowledge, the kind school rewards, does not create wealth. Wealth comes from specialized knowledge, organized and directed toward a specific end. And here's the liberating part. You do not need to own that knowledge yourself. You need to know how to access it. Hill illustrates this with a courtroom story about Henry Ford. During World War I, a newspaper called Ford an ignorant pacifist. Ford sued for libel. On the stand, the lawyers tried to prove he was ignorant by peppering him with general knowledge trivia. How many soldiers did Britain send to America in 1776, and the like? Ford finally grew tired of it and said roughly, "I have a row of electric push buttons on my desk. By pressing one, I can summon to my aid a man who can answer any question I choose to ask. Now why should I clutter my mind with general knowledge when I have men around me who can supply any I require?" The courtroom went silent, because he'd just defined the difference between the educated and the merely schooled. Ford didn't have the answers. He had access to the answers and the wisdom to know that's what actually matters. Principle 5 is imagination. Hill calls imagination the workshop of the mind. He identifies two types: synthetic imagination, rearranging existing ideas into new combinations. This is what most innovation is, and creative imagination, the flash of an entirely new idea, what we'd call intuition or inspiration. He tells the story of how a country doctor sold an old car and a secret recipe to a druggist named Asa Candler. The recipe by itself was worthless. But combined with an idea, a specific vision for how to market it, it became Coca-Cola and made fortunes for thousands. Same recipe. The imagination was the multiplier. Principle 6 is organized planning. This is the bridge from desire to reality. A desire without a plan is just a wish, and we know where wishes lead. Think about what Ford did at Highland Park. Before him, cars were built one at a time by craftsmen who moved around a stationary chassis. It took 12 hours to produce a single Model T. Ford's organized planning turned that sideways. Instead of men moving to the car moved to the men. Each worker did one task repeatedly at a station. By 1914, a Model T rolled off the line every 93 minutes. Same workers, same parts. The plan was the difference. Hill is blunt about failure here. Your first plan will probably fail. So will your second. The difference between the wealthy and everyone else is that when a plan collapses, they don't abandon the goal. They simply build a new plan. Edison failed 10,000 times before the light bulb worked. When asked about it, he said he hadn't failed. He'd found 10,000 ways that didn't work. Temporary defeat is not permanent failure. Quitting is Principle 7, is decision. Hill studied the fortunes of the wealthy and found a startling pattern. Successful people make decisions quickly and change them slowly. Unsuccessful people do the exact reverse. They agonize for weeks, then flip the moment someone raises an eyebrow. Remember Carnegie's stopwatch. Remember Hill saying yes in 29 seconds. That wasn't recklessness. It was the trained decisiveness of a mind that knows what it wants. And Hill names the real enemy of decision, the opinions of other people. Most of us hand our decisions to the crowd, terrified of what friends and family might say. Hill's rule: keep your plans to yourself. Tell the world what you've done, not what you're about to do. Principle 8 is persistence. None of the first 7 principles works without this one. And to burn it into you, Hill tells the story of R.U. Darby and the gold mine. Darby's uncle staked a claim during the gold rush, borrowed money, bought machinery, and struck a rich vein. Then, just as suddenly, the vein disappeared. They drilled desperately. Nothing. In despair, they sold the machinery to a junk man for a few $100s and went home defeated. The junk man hired a mining engineer. The engineer studied the site and calculated that the vein would reappear just 3 feet from where Darby had stopped drilling. 3 feet. The junk man made millions from that mine, and Darby went on to become an enormously successful insurance salesman because he'd learned the most expensive lesson of his life. He had quit 3 feet from gold. Every time a prospect said no, he remembered that mine, and he didn't stop. Most people, Hill says, quit at the first sign of defeat, never knowing how close they were. Persistence is not a gift you're born with. It's a state of mind you build. A definite purpose, backed by burning desire, reinforced by auto-suggestion, and made immune to the criticism of others. The plans will fail. Build new ones. The decision is the doorway. Walk through it. And once you do, keep going. We now reach the 2 principles that most summaries rush past, and they're the ones Hill considered most powerful. Principle 9 is the mastermind. This is not network more. Hill means something precise, the coordination of 2 or more minds in perfect harmony toward a definite purpose. And when that harmony is real, he claims, a 3rd mind emerges, an invisible intelligence greater than the sum of its parts. Carnegie credited his entire fortune to his mastermind, a group of about 50 men he'd surrounded himself with. Ford's rise accelerated dramatically once he befriended Edison, Firestone, and the naturalist John Burroughs. 4 titans who literally went on camping trips together to think. You become the average of the minds you keep in close orbit. Choose them deliberately. Hill folds in 3 supporting forces here. Principle 10, the transmutation of drive into creative energy. This is the idea that our most primal energy can be redirected into work and creation rather than wasted. Principle 11, the subconscious mind. The garden that grows whatever seed you plant, weed or crop. It cannot tell the difference. And Principle 12, the brain, which Hill described as a broadcasting and receiving station for thought, decades before we understood brain waves. Together, these 3 explain how the signal you send actually gets transmitted and received. They are not principles to master separately. They are the infrastructure that makes the entire system hum. And then the apex. Principle 13, the 6th sense. Hill says it can only be understood after you've mastered the other 12, so don't chase it directly. The 6th sense is the faculty through which hunches, inspirations, and warnings arrive without any traceable source. It's the part of the mind that operates beyond logic. Hill believed it was the channel through which infinite intelligence speaks to the prepared individual. And here's the grounded version, because it's not as mystical as it sounds. Every elite investor, founder, and creator describes the same thing: a gut feeling, a hunch, pattern recognition firing below the level of conscious thought. It's the reward for having done the work. When your desire is clear, your knowledge deep, and your mind disciplined, your intuition finally has enough material to speak. Hill's insight was that it only switches on after the other 12 are in place. You earn the sixth sense. Now step back. Watch how the 13 click together into a single machine. It starts with desire, a specific written time-bound goal, read aloud twice a day. That desire is charged with faith and driven inner to the subconscious through auto-suggestion. That's the ignition, then you fuel it. You acquire specialized knowledge, your own or your mastermind's. You run it through imagination to create something new. You give it structure with organized planning. You commit through rapid decision, and you protect it with relentless persistence, refusing to quit 3 feet from gold. You amplify all of it inside a mastermind, where aligned minds generate that invisible third force. Your primal energy is transmuted into creative output. The subconscious garden, planted deliberately, grows your dominant thoughts into reality. Your brain broadcasts and receives, and once all 12 are humming, the 13th switches on by itself, the sixth sense, delivering the hunches and ideas you did not consciously create. That's the machine. Every Fortune Hill studied ran on some version of it. 20 years of work. 500 of the wealthiest people in history. 100 million copies sold. And it all reduces to a single sentence Hill wrote. Whatever the mind can conceive and believe, it can achieve. It's been repeated so often it sounds like a fridge magnet, but run it back through the 13. Conceive, desire, imagination, specialized knowledge, believe, faith, autosuggestion, the subconscious. Achieve, planning, decision, persistence, the mastermind. It was never a slogan, it's a blueprint. So here's your first step, the one from Principle 1. Before you do anything else, decide on the one definite goal you've been treating as a wish. Write down the exact number, write the date, and read it out loud tonight. That's not woo. That's you seizing the telegraph line. Next week, we tackle a book that took one man 40 years to research, and the secret inside it has been called the single most important idea in personal finance. Until then, keep distilling.